Right now on Capitol Hill, the last person believed to have seen convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein alive is set to face questions behind closed doors today with the House Oversight Committee. Tova Noel was one of two corrections officers assigned to monitor Epstein the night he died by suicide inside New York's Metropolitan Correctional Center in 2019. Since then, her internet searches, financial records, and admission to falsifying records have fueled conspiracy theories about what happened that night. Let's bring in MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin and attorney Eric Fudali, who represents several Epstein survivors. Lisa, how does Noel's testimony fit into the bigger puzzle here, and what do we expect lawmakers to ask her?
So most of this investigation is focused on what Jeffrey Epstein did during his life, who he associated with, how he abused women. Tova Noel is a witness that really has relevance only with respect to how Epstein lived his final days and, most importantly, how he died. The committee is also looking into the question of, did Epstein die by suicide, a question that has been revived really in recent days with the discovery of that unsealed purported suicide note. One of the things that I think prosecutors are going to be focused on today is all of the things that went wrong the night before and the day that Jeffrey Epstein died, and whether or not those things are coincidences or whether they are suggestive of some sort of wrongdoing on behalf of correctional staff. The Department of Justice's Inspector General wrote a lengthy report about those things, concluding that while there were a bunch of what they would call misconduct, it didn't rise to the level of criminality, that people should be fired, that procedures should be revised, but never found that anyone at the Department of Corrections was actually involved in Epstein's death.
Eric, how do you and your clients see this? Just how important is this interview?
It's really important, Anna. I don't think it can be overstated what Jeffrey Epstein being able to kill himself took from the survivors. They really, really wanted their day in court. They wanted the opportunity to testify in front of him, to confront him, to look into his face, look into his eyes, and tell them how he devastated their lives. They really wanted that opportunity. They really wanted the opportunity for true justice, for true accountability, and that was taken from them when whatever happened in that prison cell happened. So I think this is of paramount importance. I think this person needs to be very thoroughly investigated and questioned, and I think the public, and most importantly, the survivors, deserve answers as to what happened in that prison cell.
We talked about the conspiracy theories that have come about after the death of Jeffrey Epstein, and I'm wondering, Lisa, could Noel provide clarity or fill in the gaps of that missing minute on the security footage?
I think she can provide some clarity as to what she herself may have been doing, but she's certainly not an IT specialist or anybody who understands video technology at the level that she could provide that clarity. And of course, Anna, she's already testified as part of that OIG investigation at the Department of Justice that I was referring to. There is a transcript of her testimony that one of your producers found in the Epstein files. It's 400 plus pages long, and anyone can see it to see how she has explained where she was that night, why she didn't check on Jeffrey Epstein and the specialized housing unit where he was then living without a roommate, which was itself counter to regulations and policies in the Bureau of Prison. I just want to go back to something Eric said that I think was so important. When Jeffrey Epstein passed away, whether he killed himself or didn't kill himself, he deprived his victims, as Eric noted, of an opportunity to be heard. The judge overseeing his indictment then held a hearing on August 27, 2019, at which victims and their lawyers were invited to say whatever they wanted to say about how that event impacted them. If there's one document that our viewers would read about sort of the overall impact of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse on his survivors, I recommend that transcript to them. It's publicly available now in the Jeffrey Epstein files. Again, August 27, 2019, an extraordinarily powerful transcript about the impact of Epstein's abuse on his survivors.
And when we talk about this particular witness that will be testifying before the Oversight Committee today, Eric, it was Noel and another security guard that were both charged with falsifying records because of their lack of checking in on Epstein that night. Initially, they said they did. Turned out they didn't. They agreed to a plea deal. Does that impact this witness's credibility? How might that change the approach for lawmakers?
It certainly impacts, the credibility that there's been some admission of falsifying records. As a trial attorney, if I had that sort of evidence against a witness, it would be a gold. That's a gold mine. That is really something. So in this context, absolutely, it should question her credibility. something shady happened. Something weird happened there. No one is supposed to be able to, especially the most prolific predator of our time, is not supposed to be able to take their own life while in federal custody. It's just not supposed to happen. There are safeguards for that. Something very strange happened at that time. There's missing footage. There's falsifying records. It is so important to find out exactly what happened there, who's at fault, and how this travesty of injustice happened.
Now, that other security guard that I mentioned has not been subpoenaed to testify. Why is that?
I think a lot of it has to do with what both of them were doing there that night. First of all, Tova Noel had been working in the facility since 4 p.m. the evening before Jeffrey Epstein was found dead. She was supposed to be the last person to see him alive. She was. Michael Thomas, on the other hand, was not only working in a capacity that he didn't usually work, but he didn't show up to work until 12 a.m. He was, with Noel, one of the 2 people who discovered Epstein dead. But his interactions with Epstein were not nearly as significant as Noel's were, because she had been working on that specialized housing unit for weeks. In fact, there is a note that was found in Jeffrey Epstein's cell after his death. We don't know whether he wrote it or not. I want to be very clear about that. But it references the fact that Tova Noel had brought Jeffrey Epstein stale food, according to the note. That indicates to me these are people who had multiple interactions with each other over a series of weeks while Epstein was in custody. The same cannot be true for Michael Thomas.
And we are also learning more about a top Goldman Sachs lawyer, Catherine Rumler, who's scheduled to come before the committee in July. Audio recordings and internal memos obtained by the New York Times reveal a reputational management firm was hired in 2024 to downplay her public association with Epstein. Eric, your reaction to that, what message does that send to survivors that she hired this firm to help with her own reputation?
I mean, unfortunately for the survivors, that is certainly not shocking. Again, I've said many times, Jeffrey Epstein is the only criminal I've ever seen to get special treatment beyond the grave, and it flows out to his associates. Anyone who seems to have been involved with Jeffrey Epstein seems to be facing a separate tier of justice and a separate tier of insight than the rest of the population. It is not surprising at all for the survivors that someone like that has hired a PR team. I mean, it seems like the United States government has been a PR team for the associates of Jeffrey Epstein, whether known or unknown. So none of this is shocking. It's just another frustrating and sort of debilitating, piece of information in this long, long line of travesties of injustice, travesties of social injustice, and just protection for the wealthy, protection for those who associated with or facilitated Jeffrey Epstein.
Thank you so much, Eric Fidali. Lisa, please stay with us.